Ask almost anyone to summarize Nico Rosberg's 2016 world title and you are virtually guaranteed to receive the same stock answer. Hamilton had car trouble, Rosberg did not. Hamilton won more races, got more pole positions, and were it not for that blown engine in Malaysia, we would now be hailing the Brit as an 8-time world champion, a scarcely believable 7 of which would have come in consecutive order. While I have no desire to ruffle feathers just for the sake of it, this narrative is simply not true. Pay even the slightest bit of attention to the events of 2016, and you'll find there was a lot more to Rosberg's triumph than a blown engine for his main rival. So, consider this video my case for the defense, an attempt to deconstruct what actually happened that season and explain why the peak of Nico Rosberg's career was the result of more than just luck and timing. Let's begin with the most popular charge, reliability. The general consensus being that Rosberg had a clean bill of health while Hamilton did not. This argument, one Hamilton himself put forth in his post-race interview in Abu Dhabi, is the go-to defense for most people when discussing this year, and, to put it mildly, it's just reductionist. First things first, yes, Hamilton was unluckier than his teammate. The then 3-time world champion suffered a gearbox change in a first-lap skirmish in Shanghai, a turbo problem that forced him to start 10th in Russia, a flurry of part changes that sent him to the back of the grid in Spa, and of course that famed engine blowout at Sepang. All severe hindrances, of that there is no doubt, and while Rosberg never suffered to the same extent, the claim that the German had a clean bill of health vis-à-vis his reliability is absolute nonsense. Rosberg suffered from brake trouble in Monaco, an engine setting issue in Baku, much like his teammate in the very same Grand Prix, and a grid penalty in Austria, before being spun to the back of the grid by Vettel in Malaysia, necessitating a significant comeback drive. He may not have had a setback as spectacular as his teammates, but don't for 1 minute think that Rosberg had it all his own way. The constant focus on car trouble with regards to 2016 has also shifted focus away from another, more seminal factor, driver error. Though rarely discussed in detail, Hamilton made numerous costly errors in 2016. He completely fluffed the starts in Australia, Italy and Japan, was largely to blame for that crash in Spain, Niki Lauda's assessment by the way, not mine. Turned into his teammate in Austria even though Nico was running wide anyway, and stuck it in the wall during qualifying in Baku. That isn't a normal number of mistakes for a multiple world champion to be making, and frankly explains why, when confronted by people who flagellate Vettel for 2018, I have no trouble citing Hamilton's 2016 campaign as a credible equivalent. Just because his errors were less conspicuous didn't make them any less costly, not least because they were, at least partly, brought on by complacency. After his early season wobbles, Hamilton took a much-needed first victory in Monaco. It may have come courtesy of Red Bull's pit lane cock-up, but regardless, he had his mojo back. A point he hammered home by winning 5 out of the next 6 Grand Prix. After trailing Rosberg by a daunting 43 points after the Spanish GP, Hamilton went into the summer break as championship leader. Call him a crackpot if you so wish, but Eddie Jordan is far from an unintelligent observer, and, when reflecting on the season-long duel between the two, Jordan claimed that Lewis thought he had it all in the bag after Hungary, only to have Rosberg hit back in the second half of the season. Yes, he was held back in Spa, but Hamilton followed up that weekend with a botched start in Monza and a strangely lackluster weekend in Singapore, where he inexplicably qualified 7/10 of a second off his teammate and posed no threat to him in the race. As tempting as it may be to blame Hamilton's unreliability, there's little denying the claim that driver error was ultimately what cost him. Before I wrap up, there is one last variable I'd like to address, a critique I see many people hurling in Rosberg's general direction: his retirement. Less than a week after winning his maiden world championship, Nico Rosberg announced his decision to retire from Formula One effective immediately, having claimed to have reached his highest goal in racing and done everything he ever set out to do. Many accused Rosberg of running away from a fight, and have since described him as a man who got lucky and quit while he was ahead, to which I say the following. Imagine if someone tried to legitimately criticize, say, Nigel Mansell, by stating that he lost out to Piquet, lost out to Prost, lost out to Senna, eventually got a dominant car and a manageable teammate in Riccardo Patrese, cruised to the title in 1992, sealing it 5 races before the end, and bailed once he got his prize. Try doing that and I promise you'll be laughed off the stage. Mansell's reputation came from the giants with whom he competed. Nico Rosberg is no different. Will history regard him as a greater driver than Sir Lewis Hamilton? Of course not. But does that in any way detract from the fact that for that one momentous season in 2016, Rosberg was able to do what no other teammate has ever been able to accomplish? Get inside Hamilton's head, exploit whatever minor weaknesses he might have displayed, and beat him to a thoroughly deserved and incredibly exciting World Championship? That is always going to be a part of Rosberg's legacy, and he has quite rightfully taken his worthy and fully deserved place among Formula One's list of great champions. And as for his decision to win one world title and then immediately leave, sift through the annals of F1 history and you'll find plenty of drivers who are simply wired differently to the likes of Hamilton, Schumacher or Senna. Some have the urge to carry on and on, others simply lack the motivation to make that sacrifice year after year after year. Just look at Jody Scheckter in 1979, Hawthorne in 1958, Damon Hill in 1999 or Alan Jones in 1981. While not all of those drivers retired immediately after becoming world champion, they never again reached the highest of highs they did in their title-winning season, a trend almost all of them attributed to a lack of motivation. Some drivers just don't have the urge to crack on and make that sacrifice year after year after year, but that doesn't detract from the fact that they still had the physical and mental wherewithal to ascend the mountain and claim the ultimate prize, which in Rosberg's case he was able to do while up against the most successful driver of all time. Regardless of the principal factor, there's no doubting the extent to which 2016 could be considered a turning point for Sir Lewis Hamilton. The internet is awash with videos describing this season as among the best things ever to happen to him, as it encouraged him to change the way he went about his racing, his rhetoric, and his relationship with the media. There's no two ways about it, Hamilton's highest of highs came after his loss to Rosberg. And I'm not just talking about his statistical highs. Anyone who wants to understand the evolution of Sir Lewis Hamilton as a human being need look no further than his conduct after losing the title to Nico in 2016 and his conduct after losing the title to Max 5 years later. He went from being widely criticized as stroppy, embittered, and perhaps even petulant, to a model of grace and dignity under the most unimaginable emotional strain. This video is not an attempt to give Hamilton a drubbing. It is an attempt to repudiate one of the sport's most recent misunderstandings. He's human, of that there's no doubt, but Sir Lewis Hamilton is still worthy of every accolade he's ever received. That doesn't mean one has to degrade the achievements of the man who beat him in equal machinery, a man who I, like many, consider the most underrated driver of his era. Thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed that, feel free to hit all the relevant buttons down below, and I'll see you all very, very soon.